Mitch, thank you for joining us. I was able to read your book.
Good.
And it was excellent.
Thank you.
We're really excited to have you here. I look forward to your presentation,
Me
by
too.
the way.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, how do you see social media as involved in our personal life as well as our professional life?
I mean, several years ago, it became this sort of conversation because it was seen as strictly a media channel, as if you were going to move from TV to now being on the web all the time, and what you watch on TV isn't the same as what you're doing online, and then you have to work and you're professional, you're personal. And I think what we've seen really quickly is that it's become very interwoven, and that social media in and of itself is less of a media, actually, it's more of a platform now. And so when you're on Facebook, it's pretty much you. And trying to sort of have a personal side and a professional side almost seems strange in this day and age, now that we've actually sort of seen this evolve and how it's come to be. So I don't see it as sort of a personal professional. I see it as people who are taking an initiative to actually really demonstrate who they are and what they're about. And I think that what it's doing is it's creating more of a platform of interest. And so you actually learn more about people than you ever thought. Anecdotally, I was invited to a networking event a couple years ago. And I sort of get the invite list, and you look through and you're like, who's on there and who do I want to sit next to? And there was one person I didn't want to sit next to, and it's because they were the lead marketer for one of the National Hockey League teams. And the reason I didn't want to sit next to them is because I know nothing about sports. And I was worried I'd sit next to them and have nothing to say. And I went onto their Facebook page and wanted to sort of connect to all the people, and it turns out that he likes music, the same type of music I like. It turned out that he was into comic books that I like too. We wound up becoming best friends. And so, the lesson for me there, which is sort of an analog version of the social media question, was you never know. And the people who are really expressing and sharing the stuff that they're actually passionate about usually create more depth in terms of their relationships and connections.
Don't you think there's a fine line, however, between where you have too much personal information and not enough personal information, that there may be a negative impact of social media, too much social media?
Yeah, and I think just being more critical of it is people are not intuitively media savvy, and so they don't necessarily realize what they're doing when they're publishing. I often see people who ask me questions about whether or not they should sign up for something because they're worried about giving their email address out. And then at the same voice, they've been on Facebook for years publishing pictures of all their kids and their family and their friends. And I'm like, you're worried about an email address, but there are pictures of your children published to the world that anyone can see and access. So I don't look at it so much from that optic. I look at it more from people having to understand that when you're publishing it, you're actually broadcasting, and it is to a global audience, that privacy is inherently very, very different from how we've traditionally seen it to what it really is now, and that you have to understand what it is you're doing to understand the ramifications of it. So the truth of the matter is, you're right. In many instances where we're currently at, you have 800 million people on Facebook, and the majority of them don't necessarily understand what they're really publishing and putting out there for the world to see. And so I take it a step back and look at it more from an education standpoint, where I think people would be well versed, and that goes down to even elementary school, to be educating people on what it means to be more media savvy, because we're in a day and age where everybody is a publisher.
I know for employers, there's a fine line between productivity and counterproductivity, where employers don't know how much time that their staff should spend allocating to social media. Can you give some insight?
Well, I think, again, there's a fine line between people who are on social media because they're lazy and doing anything they can to avoid work. And my comment to them is, turning off Facebook or YouTube is just going to make them pick up smoking or speaking on the phone more. The people who are super lazy are going to bring in their iPhones or Blackberries and use them to access social channels anyway, so you can't really stop the pervasiveness of that. That's one issue where that's not a technology issue, that's a people issue that needs to be resolved. The other side of it, in terms of actually looking at how much time should a business spend with their employees leveraging the social channels, depends on what the goals and objectives are. It's very, very different for every business. Some businesses are there because they're trying to just share information. Others are there because they're seeing it as some sort of lead generation platform. Others are trying to just broadcast message and be there consistently and just pervasively in an annoying way usually. So to me, there's not a sort of one answer for all. It depends on what the goals and objectives are, why you're doing it, what the effort is against what the output is, how you're benchmarking that, and then making sure that you're spending the time in your analytics, making sure you're getting the results that you're trying to achieve with them.
I know social media gives many companies a competitive advantage, but do you see as more and more people are involved in social media that there might be a timeline or expiration date where it has its effectiveness?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that when social media first started, there was this sort of like, let's be cautious because this could be a fad scenario. The book, The Clue Train Manifesto, which was one of the catalysts for this movement, came out in 2000. It's like 12 years old almost now, so I don't think it's a fad. I'm pretty convinced this stuff is here to stay. It's a bit of the toothpaste out of the tube, where I don't think we're going to go back to a world where people can't share and do all of this stuff. So I'm not necessarily sure that there's a sort of that time frame or timeline on it. I think it's more a matter of businesses being able to figure out how they're going to make the things that they do as shareable and as findable as possible. The big misnomer that I see is people think social media is about this conversation, the back and forth, and I don't really think it is. I think what makes something social at its very core is the ability for somebody to take their information, whatever it is they're creating in text, images, audio, and video, and make it as shareable and as findable as possible. And the brands that are doing that will have some sort of level of social engagement if people like what it is that they're sharing and making as findable as possible. The brands that do it very well will have some engagement and back and forth with consumers. The brands that do it amazingly might get some level of conversation, but I mean, the majority of people, and you and I are included in that lot, don't really want conversations with brands. We might want a little bit of engagement here and there. We might want to follow them and have an interest in the area that they're covering, but beyond that, that's really the sort of core of it for me.
One of the areas that I think is very challenging, and I know as an employer myself, I have difficulty with this. How do you truly measure the ROI for social media?
So what we're starting to see is that social media is a layer. It's not necessarily one specific channel, and I think that that's been the biggest challenge to date. It's like when you take an ad on a TV station or two, you know which TV station performs better than the other, and it all looks the same. And then you add in this social thing, and you're like, how do we compare that ROI to the other ROI? And the truth of the matter is that it doesn't really work like that, because social media can be anything and everything. Again, it's this open publishing platform that allows you to share information in text, images, audio, and video instantly for free to the world. And so the question back isn't how do you define ROI? The question back is what's the business model and reasoning for leveraging things you could do within social media as a strategy. You build your KPIs off of that, and then you can start defining ROI. So my ROI might be things like how many people at the end of the year call and want to hire my agency to be their digital marketing agency of record. For you, it might be how many comments you get or how many friends and followers you have, because you have a way of metricing that against something else. I think the challenge comes in just asking the question, so like, what's the ROI of social media? The question back is, what's the business model? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to get more members? Are you trying to keep the existing members engaged? Are you trying to provide value over and above a sale? Are you trying to do post-care? So, I mean, it's a myriad of things that there's not, again, that direct answer to. And I know that it's sort of that strange answer where it feels like it's deflective, but it's not deflective because it's not TV advertising, it's not radio advertising, it's not a print ad. It can be any of those things and all of those things. Are you advertising? Are you marketing? Are you doing customer relationship building? So when you start understanding the power of the platform and what you can do with it, I think ROI becomes actually a very natural part of it. We know that it's an engine of PR. We know that it's an engine to express our strategy and how we think. We know from our blog it's a way to get our name out there. We've built a massive audience where people want to be connected to the information we're sharing. There's an inherent value in that as well. And so you also start adapting your ROI and changing it and making it work based off of what you're hearing back. It's a very humbling experience, social media. I mean, you put something out into the world and you can literally hear and see the digital tumbleweeds come by as nothing happens, as nobody likes your video or thinks it's interesting or shares it. I mean, we never really had a metric like that as a marketing world before. And so, every day that I blog, as an example, I'll go the next day and I can see in the analytics if it worked or not. I could think it's genius. It doesn't matter what I think at the end of the day. It's what the audience does with it. And so those are the interesting things that allow you to actually really dig in and figure out an overall ROI driven by the strategy.
In these types of economies, we're seeing that many people, particularly in the healthcare industry, insurance industry, the first thing that gets hit is their marketing budgets. Do you see that this is a good strategy to reduce your marketing budgets in poor economies because people aren't there to buy, or do you think the reverse, that people should reinvest or invest more in these types of economies?
Studies have been done actually over the ages, from the Great Depression all the way on, that show that the companies that actually invest in marketing when times are tough are the ones that have traditionally always prevailed. Marketing gets cut because marketing is poorly positioned within the C-suite. It's seen as an expense. But at the end of the day, if you ask a company, what is it? It's the value of the brand, which is also the engine of marketing that it has. And so I'm definitely on a bit of a mission to help brands understand better that it's not branding, marketing, advertising should never be seen as an expense. Maybe on the front end because you're paying for something out to buy an ad, but the engines of marketing are definitely not expenses.
If you could give 3 words of advice to employers for social media, whether they're small employers, mid-size, or large employers, what are 3 core messages that you would give to them?
Please accept it would be my message. I see too many people hesitate because they think it's about young kids playing around on Facebook. I see too many people think that they can take whatever they've done traditionally and just copy and paste it into a YouTube video, and off they go. You have a 30-second spot, just put it on YouTube, and there we're very social. I think people have clearly expressed to the world how they feel about these engines of connectivity, and the answer is they love it and they want more of it. This is the first time in the history of business where consumers are fundamentally ahead of businesses in terms of marketing, communications, connectivity, and being super untethered, being able to access this anywhere. The brands that fail to acknowledge this new way that people are trying to connect to them are the ones who are going to ultimately pay that price. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about social media. It's really about building loyalty and having great customers who have great experiences. And if you can't provide that to them in the palm of their hands with their iPhones and things like that, you're not going to be able to provide them with a service. And so for me, it's not even one of those things where I'm on the evangelism trail anymore of trying to convince people this is what you should be doing. That world has gone. It's gone. And I think that there's a bare minimum expectation that consumers have. I mean, when they're in the car and they're sitting outside and they're trying to see if you're open or not, if they can't access that by a mobile phone, it's essentially like not being in the yellow pages back in the day. So I don't really see it anymore as one of those, how do you get them on board type of thing. It simply is, if brands don't want to take part and participate in it, they're missing out on a huge opportunity.
For industries like medical tourism, where traveling patients are gathering most of their information on the web, how important do you see social media in that role between the ultimate patient consumer and healthcare provider?
It's a question of visibility versus invisibility. I mean, if you're providing that service and you're not there and you're not active and you're not responding to questions or providing information that you know people will fundamentally ask on the journey of making that decision, you're not in the business. You are literally invisible. I agree with you. I think that no matter what the experience, if you had done an experience like that and we were having coffee about it and you told me about it, I would still go online as my first place. In your industry specifically, this is a digital first posture. The customer is digital first. They're not making phone calls. They're going online as the validation point for the brand. If the brand isn't present in a very holistic way and able to answer and connect and communicate, I don't really see much of an industry beyond that.
I know you haven't given your presentation yet, but I think you're going to receive quite a few questions from people who either have a lot of experience in social media and others that can't even fathom Facebook. What is the first step, if I'm new to this industry, what is the first step that I need to take to become more visible?
The easiest thing to do is to ask why, not what. I think a lot of people say, what should I be doing on Facebook or what should I be doing on YouTube? And it's the wrong question. I think why is the best question to ask to start with, because why should I be on Facebook? Why should I have a blog? It forces you to look at the business strategy and then actually figure out what tactics you'll need to accomplish that business goal. In my professional life in digital, which has been since the late 80s, I haven't seen an instance where the digital channels can't provide an answer that will get you there either cheaper, faster, build more loyalty, whatever the case may be and whatever your metrics are, but that digital can assist that in a very, very dramatic way. So to me, the first place to start is the why.
Mitch, thanks for taking the time for the interview. Very
Pleasure.
much appreciate it. And we're happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.